in just a moment today's video. But first, a 30-second announcement. What if the secret to living your best life is realizing that you're not fighting the world, you're fighting yourself? We are inviting you to get deep with our free 7-day self-love challenge, compliments of our intuitive arts and self-growth school, Zen Academy, where we feature a huge catalog of courses and certifications to help you constantly improve yourself in your self-growth and as an intuitive arts professional. Click the link to find out more and get started today. And now, on to today's video. I want to talk this morning about stories. Stories are so important to us. Quote by Maya Angelou, one of my favorite authors. She said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." I want you to start thinking about your own story in your own life. And, we live our own lives and we're in our own bodies. So to us, our stories can be kind of boring, right? They're not, because we're with us all the time. But to other people, those stories are fascinating. On the flip side, we need to be fascinated with stories of other people, because sometimes we can get in a hole and forget to engage in the story of life. Life is made up of stories, and we don't realize how vital they are to our survival, to our spirit, to our soul, to all those things. So I want to talk about stories today. Everyone has a story to tell, and we can learn from each other's stories, from farmers to CEOs, to homeless people, to world travelers. There are so many paths that we travel on this planet with so many stories that happen on the way. And there's so many stories. Think about all the thousands of stories we'll never hear, right? That just people that were born lived their life and they passed on. But stories are one of the things that help us survive. That's how important stories are. They give us hope and they help us communicate who we are to each other. It's like you gain rapport with someone, you get bonded with someone when you learn their story. And then they're not just a person that you see that's like out in the world. Suddenly they are relatable and you understand them and they understand you. And it builds a richness in life and helps us to move through the things in life we don't really want to move through, but we have to move through. Well, sometimes you see a shy, quiet person and they seem like they're probably pretty boring and, they don't have much of a story to tell. But they might have the most amazing life story and really big dreams in their head. It takes us time to get to know that person that's quiet and find out who they are. I mention that because a lot of empaths, now there's extroverted empaths and there's introverted empaths. I know a lot of you on here are empathic in a higher degree than most normal people, but many empaths are introverted and quiet, right? But still waters run deep. There's a lot going on in there. There's dreams, there's imagination, there's so much story that hasn't yet been told. People can travel on a path of wealth and privilege, and other people struggle with only themselves to rely on. And both of those have great stories to tell. You get the rags to riches story that inspires us, and then you've got admiring people who have earned that wealth and privilege, and we want to know how they did it so we can create abundance in our life. And each person learns lessons, makes choices, and develops a unique perspective, which only they can claim and share. And even two people who have had very similar lives will have slightly different experiences, and that leads them to different points of view. And so each person I view as this treasure trove of story waiting to be explored, if you can stop and ask questions and listen to other people's unique perspectives. So when we retain that spark of curiosity and the warmth that is required to open someone up and have an ear to hear their story, it can be a world changer, and you can exchange stories. What about you? What about your story? And I want to let you know, you don't have to write a big novel that's, a world changer. You don't have to do this huge thing to tell your story. It's in small steps, as I'm going to kind of demonstrate in a minute. But I want to know, have you told your story yet? Have you told parts of your story yet? Are you willing to share your story? I don't mean in this big, huge way you're trying to win some prize for literature. I mean telling your story, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, all you have is your story. That's it. You know what I mean? Your story lives beyond you. And are you going to share that so that it can trickle out and ripple out and help the rest of us get better, heal, and all of that? Has your story helped anyone yet? I want you to think about that. What was a time in your life that you told your story to someone and it changed them in some way. I want you to think about that, because there are parts of your story, no matter what and how boring you think it is, that are there willing to help someone. Those parts of your story can help someone. Here's the part that makes it hard and what I want to really get to this morning. Sometimes those stories are about our shame and our pain and things we haven't quite healed enough to be able to tell the story yet. But here's the irony, Alanis Morissette, those are the best stories, right? Like, I went to Disneyland, it was great. We had a great time. We rode the roller coaster. Okay, whatever. What are you going to learn from that? I know how to get to Disney. Where do you buy the tickets? Go to here, here, here. Like, those are like stories that help each other navigate, great, I want to go to Disneyland too. Are those life changers? Not really. Okay, the things that change our lives are hearing other people's stories about shame, pain, things that are vulnerable. Those are the stories that change our life. So what are your stories that are shame-filled, that are pain-filled? At what stage are you in those stories? Have you healed from that? So I want to tell you a little bit about a story that I experienced that was once filled with shame. I had an abortion in college. I was like 19, 20 years old or something. And I was raised super religious-y, so it was like a super big step for me to go do that. Of course, I did it really quietly and didn't tell anyone in my life about it except for my boyfriend at the time who paid for it. I was relieved. It was like I, as a 19, 20-year-old college student with a whole life ahead of me, was happy to have that decision, but also struggling with what I've been raised with and the shame around that. So I know abortion's a big topic and maybe that's not the right thing to, as an example, but it's a huge example in my life. So whatever your personal beliefs around that, and if you, translate into that, whatever it is for you. I had a point a couple of years, maybe 5 years after the abortion. I was like married, I was pregnant, I was moving on with my life, and I had a friend who, she was struggling with something, and she's like, I'm really struggling with something and I don't know how to talk about it. And I had not told anyone my story yet. The only people in my life that knew were my then ex-boyfriend. Somehow I instinctively knew. She just couldn't bring herself to say what it was. And she's like, I've struggled with this for 15 years. It's painful. I don't know what to do with it, but I can't talk about it. I'm here. I'm an open ear. And she wouldn't. She said, no, you know what? I'm not ready. There's too much shame around it. And she was just crying and upset. And instinctively, I kind of knew what it was. It just sparked. I said, did you have an abortion? And she goes, I said, I had one in college, and I told her my story and my own struggle through, releasing the shame and the guilt around it. Really the guilt, right? The guilt and the shame. It was like the guilt from what I perceived that I had done, but also the mixed feelings of it was the right decision for me, but then the shame from the religious upbringing. So we talked about that and how I'd struggled through it. And the truth is, when I told her that story, I wasn't completely healed from it. I was wanting to be healed myself. So as I told her my story, it both healed her and got me over the hump of, okay, I can finally let that go. I can finally forgive myself. I can finally realign my beliefs with what is actually true for me in my life. So I know that's a big one for women, and I know especially so many women coming into the spiritual community after leaving a super strict religious background, that can be a struggle to deal with. This topic this morning is not about abortion, but it's a strong story that I want to give you as an example about those stories that you can share that you maybe are not quite ready to share because there's still a little bit of shame around it, or there's healing that has to be done. Do that healing, because there's people out there that once you kind of get through that, and at that point that I had that conversation was at the point that I was ready to how do I finally heal from this? But by me sharing my story with her, it healed both of us. So don't ever think that your story is boring. Okay, find a way to tell it. And the first time you tell your story, it might be hard. It might be emotional, but find a way to tell it, because you get to relieve yourself of that burden. We think we're the only one with this big, huge shame, and we're this horrible, dirty person. And it's not true. We all walk around with these other stories that are not good stories. So we get to our true story and we purify that story by sharing it. So find a way to tell your story. And that might be through a conversation like I had with my friend. It might be through art. You might not even directly tell that story, right? It might be through writing, journaling, or even dance. The important thing is that you tell the story. It doesn't have to be Maya Angelou level or Toni Morrison level or something like that, but it has to be something that you tell. So the stories that are painful are important for us to tell in some way, even if it's not publicly shared, even if you just tell it to yourself and you get it out and put it out in some cathartic way so that you can heal from it. There's a great musical that I got to sing in at one point back in the day. It was when we did a vignette of this musical for the Golden Rainbow AIDS benefit that happens every year in Vegas. It's Once on This Island is the name of the musical. I got to sing in it. It was really, really fun. And one of the songs we performed was Why We Tell the Story. So it's kind of the finale number that the whole island gets together and this is why we tell the story. It gets me a little emotional. Why we tell the story for our mutual benefit to heal ourselves, heal each other, and heal the tribe, and heal the world, and heal the island, right? Because we're just an island floating through space, really. I have a fun exercise for you guys to get in touch with your story, because some people have a hard time accessing that story or even how to tell it. But I'm going to give you a trick. So you may not like sharing your story directly. Here's my story. Here's what I went through. But a way to tell your story that is more cathartic for you is the most important part. Write it in a journal. Do something that expresses that story. And you'll find that after you do that, it becomes easier to share it with other people when the occasion arises that it is going to help someone and that it's cathartic for them. And then it really brings you joy. Like that story that I went through, that really, I look back on that and I go, I helped her get through something really difficult. And she was in way deeper religious trauma than I was. She was still actively in her religion and kind of still in the culture of it. So here is the exercise, getting to your story and being comfortable with your story. Get some sheets of paper, your computer, your typewriter, whatever your mode of transmission is, and write your story as if it was a fairy tale. Okay, once upon a time, there was a little girl who ... And tell about your demons, tell about the ogre in the forest, but write your story as if it was a fairy tale. Now, this might be a story like mine, like the story of my abortion in college. It could be the story of a trauma from childhood. It could be a story about a traumatic car accident. It could be the story of your life, like once upon a time, there was a little girl born and her family was, weird and, whatever, or she had a happy family. Write it as a fairy tale, and you'll eventually bump up against something healing and cathartic as you write, as you let go to the story. You might even want to, put on the camera and tell the story to the camera as if you're speaking to an audience of children. That's one way to do it too if you don't like to write. Put on your camera and tell the story to a child and then listen back to it. And then you might want to write it. So there's a lot of fun ways you can use to get to your story and to get comfortable telling your story. Because like Maya Angelou said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. It's huge, and that speaks to more than just telling a story. It speaks to healing. It speaks to catharsis. It speaks to sharing that pain with people that are willing to hold space with you. Julie says, I gave my personal diary to a women's group of survivors of abuse. It felt so good to let that go, even though the details were so personal. Says, I had a medical abortion. I had hyperemesis gravidarum, and my body was failing. My heart was not doing good. The ER cardiologist told me it was either me and the baby would die or just the baby. I had shame for so long. Then the doctor that performed the abortion shamed me. I had a week worth of IV fluids, and in his mind didn't have hyperemesis gravidarum. What an asshole. Can I just stop and insert that? He was so rude and hurtful and blamed me for killing a viable life to keep mine. He told me I was lying. He hacked me and I was hemorrhaging. The entire process was so ugly. Thank you for sharing your story. I am so sorry that you went through that. And sadly, I've heard this kind of thing so many times. My experience was as good as it could have been. I had, strong women who were there with me. I actually had a male doctor that performed it who was very kind. And I actually didn't go into the clinic and there weren't any protesters. It was just no one outside, quiet morning. It was peaceful. Mine was an emotional struggle after, but I am so sorry that you went through that. It is something that continues to happen. That shame around your choice, and no one really knows your personal circumstances but you. And sometimes you need to get more in touch with those afterwards and really figure out how to release that trauma. Because yes, it's a physical trauma on your body as well. So even if you don't hold beliefs around that, you still have trauma to overcome because there's a physical trauma that you've gone through. Thank you guys for being here this morning. I didn't know we were going to talk so much about that hot topic, but I guess I did, because when you bring up a hot topic, it comes out. But it's important to heal from. As a therapist, I've helped a lot of women through that aftermath that I was nowhere near thinking about being a therapist when I had that conversation with my friend. But years later, after having helped a lot of women through those kinds of traumas, there's a lot of us out there that have gone through that and are not talking about it. So share them in a way that is right for you and healing for you. And if anyone made you feel shame around it, especially if they had a penis, fuck that bitch. Okay, it's your life and it's your body, and you need to heal the way that you need to heal. All right, guys, as always, I am here for you, trying to create a safe space. I love you guys, and I am thankful that you are here with me. Trust me. Drop a GIF or a meme, thoughts on today's inspiration, a hashtag feelgoodfam in the comments. Just a reminder to take a moment and smash that subscribe button. And don't forget to sign up for our free 7-day self-love challenge. Compliments of Zen Ed Academy, where it has never been easier than right now to get comprehensive PhD-backed education to improve your life and to get professionally certified in your intuitive arts career. Mediumship, tarot, self-growth. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.